Welcome, everyone. Today, we are tackling one of the most persistent questions in industrial management. Who actually owns OEE? Is it operations, maintenance, engineering, or does it fall into a gap where nobody truly takes charge? We're going to move beyond the math and look at how boards and executive management should govern this vital metric. To start, we must clear up a common misconception. OEE is not owned by the department that reports it. Instead, OEE is owned by the leadership system. Its true purpose is to remove losses faster than the business can create them, which requires a much broader view than just production numbers. From a board perspective, the critical question is about authority and accountability. When OEE drops, who is empowered to change the underlying system? If we say OEE is everyone's metric, we risk it becoming nobody's work. Board-level governance isn't about micromanagement. It's about understanding how operational losses transform into capacity, margin, and cash flow. Let's refresh our understanding of the OEE formula in its simplest form. It's the product of availability, performance, and quality. While the math is simple, it exposes deeply complicated organizational behaviors. It essentially reveals how much of your plan time is actually spent producing good products at the right speed. Why is this so urgent now? Even with massive investments in smart manufacturing, governance still dictates value. We are seeing organizations normalize losses as business as usual. In today's climate of labor pressure and supply chain volatility, uncovering hidden capacity is more valuable than ever, and boards need these metrics translated into EBITDA and enterprise risk. Our core thesis for this session is that OEE is a cross-functional enterprise system, not a departmental score. While operations owns discipline, maintenance owns availability, and engineering owns capability, it is the leadership's role to ensure these three gears mesh together to drive the whole system forward. Here is our agenda for today. We will deconstruct the formula, assign clear ownership across functions, explore a governance model that works, and most importantly, translate these technical figures into financial value for the board and executive team. In part one, we'll look at the promise and confusion of OEE. We must remember that while OEE looks mathematical, its ownership is entirely organizational. Before we point fingers, we need to understand what the data is really telling us and what it might be hiding. As we've seen, OEE combines uptime, speed, and quality. But the real value isn't the final percentage. It's the signal it provides for loss removal. It should be used as a flashlight to find problems, not a scoreboard to assign blame. A common mistake is treating OEE as a maintenance KPI. While maintenance influence is high, they don't control every factor. Operations controls the starts and stops, and engineering controls the equipment's inherent capability. OEE sits at the intersection of all these functions. On the flip side, OEE isn't just an operations KPI either. If an asset is poorly designed or the work quality and repairs is weak, no amount of operator discipline can operate a high OEE into existence. If the underlying data is unreliable, teams end up debating the numbers instead of fixing the machines. OEE actually speaks three different languages. Availability asks if we can run when scheduled. Performance asks if we can run at the effective rate, and quality asks if we can get it right the first time. Each of these maps to different management behaviors and decisions. When we look at the 6 big losses, we see where ownership ambiguity begins. Breakdowns might be a maintenance/engineering issue, but setup and adjustment are often owned by operations. Identifying the primary owner for each loss code is the first step toward effective governance. The danger is that when everyone is responsible for the OE number, nobody feels responsible for the loss removal. True ownership must be assigned at the decision right and action level. It's about who has the power to close the gap on a specific loss code. We must also connect OEE to business value. A 1-point change in OEE isn't just a number. It represents capacity without capital expenditure, reduced overtime, lower customer service risk, and more predictable cash flow. The board's insight here is crucial. You don't need to manage the OEE, but you must govern whether the organization is capable of converting losses into action. Ask yourselves, which losses are we repeatedly tolerating, and who has the authority to stop them? In part 2, we dive deeper into the formula itself. We'll see that availability, performance, and quality are not just numbers. They are actually the output of your management systems. Deconstructing them reveals the behaviors required to improve them. Let's look at availability. While it often starts with maintenance visibility, it exposes the whole system. For example, changeovers and line readiness reflect your operating systems, while parts availability reflects supply chain discipline. It's a cross-functional metric of how well we protect our runtime. Performance is where OEE becomes a shared conversation. Speed loss can be a conscious choice by an operator or a result of equipment wear. Minor stops often hide recurring defects that haven't been escalated. It's about protecting the flow and recognizing when the bottleneck is being starved. Quality loss is often treated separately, but it consumes the same capacity as downtime. Scrap and rework are massive drains on cash. Quality drift is frequently an early warning sign of equipment health issues, and it must be governed as an integral part of OEE ownership. To make ownership clear, we use a loss tree. We decompose the high-level OEE score into specific categories like weighting, minor stops, or startup yield. By breaking it down this way, the economic impact and the necessary corrective actions become much easier to see. This value leakage waterfall shows how losses erode your margins long before a major failure occurs. Because these costs are often dispersed across different departmental budgets, like energy, overtime, or spare parts. No single manager may see the full economic signal unless it's consolidated. Be wary of bad OEE math. Boards should challenge the calculation before reacting to it. Is the ideal rate realistic? Is manual loss coding shifting blame to the weakest function? Aggregating OEE across an entire plant can also hide the critical bottlenecks that actually drive value. Metrics drive behavior, and OEE targets can sometimes distort it. If we push only for speed, we might see equipment damage. If we penalize downtime too harshly, teams might hide data. Leadership's job is to protect the purpose behind the metric, ensuring that activity doesn't replace defect removal. There is a significant risk in aggregation. A plant's average OEE might look fine, but if the bottleneck line is struggling, the enterprise value is suffering. We must manage the constraint first. Improving a non-bottleneck may look good on paper, but create no saleable output. Ultimately, OEE is just a conversation starter. It should trigger 3 immediate questions. What is the largest loss? Is the cause controllable? And most importantly, what decision is needed right now to remove it? In part 3, we focus on the ownership lens. The most successful organizations don't waste time arguing over who owns the number. Instead, they assign clear owners to specific losses, decisions, and routines where action, authority, and accountability meet. Operations ownership is about operating inside the envelope. They own the discipline of the run. Their core question should be, are we operating the asset in a way that preserves its ability to make good products tomorrow, rather than borrowing life from the asset for short-term win? Maintenance ownership is about protecting availability by converting asset risk into planned, quality work. Instead of just responding faster to breakdowns, their focus should be on reducing failure risk through precision work and eliminating repetitive defects before they become downtime. Engineering ownership is critical for removing constraints that operations and maintenance can't solve alone. They own the design limits and the equipment's inherent capability. They need to ensure that teams aren't trapped in repeat execution loops caused by poor design or specifications. Quality ownership must be governed as an OEE loss because scrap consumes capacity. They partner with operations on setup standards and with maintenance when equipment condition causes drift. We cannot allow quality metrics to be treated as a separate universe from productivity. Supply chain and planning also have a seat at the table. OEE suffers when materials aren't ready or when production planning creates impossible schedules. Scheduling discipline is the bridge that connects lost visibility to the actual execution of work. Finance acts as the translator. They shouldn't just be looking at maintenance costs. They should be validating the economics of the losses. By defining the cost of downtime and contribution margins, they turn machine losses into a language the board understands. Enterprise value. The executive leadership owns the operating system itself. They must set the expectation that OEE losses are business losses, not departmental excuses. They protect the cadence of reviews and ensure that the necessary capabilities, like data quality and skills, are properly funded. The board's role is governed by risk appetite and visibility. You don't own the metric, but you must govern the enterprise risk behind persistent losses. This includes monitoring constraint risk, deferred maintenance, and the organization's discipline in making timely business decisions. To make this practical, we use a RACI map. It assigns responsibility, accountability, consultation, and information for every type of loss. For instance, while maintenance is responsible for breakdowns, operations is accountable for changeover discipline. This eliminates nobody's work. Decision rights are what make ownership real. A loss without an owner is just a complaint. Every recurring loss needs a clear escalation path, from the area leader up to the plant manager and executive team, before it becomes a permanent, accepted part of your business model. When losses cross boundaries, we need an escalation mechanism. This isn't about blame, it's a value protection tool. When normal ownership is insufficient to solve a cross-functional problem, escalation ensures the right resources are applied to protect enterprise value. Part 4 introduces our governance model. OEE only improves when data, routines, and decision rights create repeated loss removal behavior. We have to convert that visibility into a disciplined operating cadence. It starts with a daily OEE loss review. This is the frontline mechanism for turning yesterday's failures into today's actions. It's about separating the noise from repeatable patterns and assigning owners to constraints immediately. Then we have the weekly schedule lock. OEE is frequently damaged when improvement work is sacrificed for the emergency of the day. We must protect the time allocated for risk reduction work and ensure that maintenance windows are respected. At the monthly level, we shift to a loss cost review. This is where we translate chronic losses into dollars, capacity, and risk. It's a forum for leadership to decide on resource allocation and accept or mitigate enterprise-level risks. Finally, the quarterly board OEE risk review focuses on the big picture. Here, we look at the trends of accepted versus eliminated risk and ensure that capital timing decisions are correctly linked to our most critical asset constraints. An OEE control tower should do more than just display pretty dashboards. It should coordinate loss removal in real time. It must feed the operating rhythm, connecting live losses with work execution and business impact so leaders can act, not just admire the data. Data governance is the foundation of credibility. If your teams don't trust the numbers, your meetings will devolve into debates about math. We need consistent definitions, standardized loss codes, and automated links between production and maintenance systems. Standard loss codes are the grammar of OEE governance. Whether it's a waiting parts availability loss or a reduced speed performance loss, having a common language allows for clear accountability and across-the-board comparisons. We must also be careful of false precision. The goal isn't to find a perfect decimal point. It's to identify controllable loss. Don't let automated dashboards hide weak reason coding, and never reward OEE changes without first validating that a loss was actually removed. Digital tools and AI are accelerators, but they aren't owners. AI can help classify events and recommend work priorities, but human leadership is still required to weigh safety, quality, and financial trade-offs. Technology increases speed, but leadership creates value. We advocate for a human-in-the-loop approach. While AI detects and classifies, people must approve and execute. This ensures that when a loss is deliberately tolerated as a business decision, there's a clear record of who accepted that risk. In Part 5, we look at financial translation. OEE becomes relevant to the board only when it's expressed as EBITDA, cash flow, and enterprise value. We're moving from machine talk to business talk. OEE directly impacts EBITDA. Lost productive time leads to lower output, higher overtime, and scrap, all of which erode margins. However, the impact varies. 1% OEE on a bottleneck line is worth far more than 1% on a non-constrained asset. One of the most powerful arguments for OEE is capacity without CAPEX. Improving OEE on a constraint can give you weeks of additional production time per year. This allows you to delay expensive capital projects and improve asset utilization immediately. OEE instability also puts pressure on cash flow. Unreliable output forces the creation of inventory buffers and leads to emergency shipping costs. By stabilizing OEE, we improve cash conversion and planning confidence across the entire supply chain. How do we estimate the value of 1% OEE? We keep it simple. Take the gained hours, multiply by the effective rate and margin, and subtract the implementation cost. We use ranges rather than false precision to drive better decision-making. We must also consider the life cycle. Running a machine harder might increase short-term OEE, but it builds reliability debt that leads to future failures. Governance means choosing the right balance between near-term output and long-term asset health. Investors value predictable output. OEE supports enterprise value by proving we have disciplined capital allocation and resilient margins. It shows the market that we understand our capacity and can manage operational risks effectively. Watch out for the hidden risk view. A stable OEE trend can actually mask rising risk if teams are accepting more deferred maintenance than they are eliminating. You can report OEE improvement while silently accumulating a reliability crisis. A board-level dashboard should cover 4 areas: behavior, like review cadence; asset health, critical risk; business value, margin leakage; and learning, transferring knowledge. This helps you focus your attention where it matters most. In Part 6, we provide an implementation roadmap. Our goal is to make OEE ownership durable. We aren't just building a new dashboard. We are building a repeatable system for removing loss from the business. Phase 1 is diagnose. Before prescribing a solution, we must understand where ownership is currently breaking down. We map the constraints and trace a single significant loss from its detection to its closure to see where the system fails. Phase 2 is stabilize. We restart the daily and weekly routines and stop debating low-value data noise. The focus here is on a short list of bad actors and protecting the time needed to fix them. Phase 3 is standardize. We ensure that definitions, loss codes, and owner rules are consistent across all shifts and plants. This common language is what makes enterprise-wide learning and benchmarking possible. Phase 4 is embed. This is where OEE enters the corporate DNA. It becomes part of the budget, talent development, and capital allocation process. We start reviewing asset health right alongside output performance. Phase 5 is scale. Once the system works on a bottleneck line, we expand it. We don't just copy-paste the posters. We scale the decision rights and data standards, creating a community of practice across the organization. Phase 6 is audit and renew. Like any control system, OEE governance needs periodic review. We check if actions actually remove the recurring causes and retire any metrics or meetings that no longer drive value or change decisions. This maturity model shows the journey from reactive firefighting to enterprise governance. We want to move beyond just seeing a number to a state where OEE data actively drives our capital strategy and risk management. For the first 100 days, the executive agenda should be clear. Month 1 is about validation. Month 2 is about clarifying owner rules. And by day 100, we should be launching our evaluated risk dashboards. This 18-month roadmap aligns with your annual planning and capital cycles. Each phase must produce tangible evidence of success: losses removed, decisions changed, and value protected. In our final section, Part 7, we'll look at board-level discussion and action. We'll use case vignettes to test whether your organization is ready to govern OEE as a true business system. Vignette 1 illustrates a common trap. OEE improved on a non-bottleneck line, but because the system constraint remained the same, profit didn't budge. The lesson? Always prioritize value-weighted OEE over local averages. Vignette 2 shows a case where maintenance was blamed for speed loss, but the real issue was a process instability that operators were trying to compensate for. This highlights the need for engineering to look at the operating envelope. In Vignette 3, a quality drift was actually an early signal of equipment wear. By treating quality as a separate silo, The team missed a chance to fix the machine before it failed. OEE forces these functions to talk to each other. Let's try a board exercise. If a bottleneck machine has repeated short stops, but every department says they're within spec, who owns the fix? Who calculates the business impact? This scenario tests whether your escalation paths are actually working. Here are 5 questions every board should ask. Which assets control our value? What are our top losses by dollars, not just minutes? Who can accept risk when we defer a fix? These questions ensure governance without micromanagement. To move forward, we must also stop certain behaviors. Stop using OEE to blame people. Stop averaging away your bottlenecks. And stop celebrating local gains that don't actually improve the enterprise's bottom line. Our key takeaways are simple. OEE is a cross-functional system that must be designed and financially translated. Boards must view it through the lens of value, risk, and capacity. Remember, the best systems remove losses faster than they are created. Your call to action is to move beyond the question, what is our OEE? And instead ask, what value are we failing to create? And who is accountable for removing that loss? Start mapping your constraints and embedding these routines today. Now, let's open the floor for discussion. In your own organizations, which OEE losses are being reported clearly, but aren't being truly owned by anyone with the power to fix them? Thank you for your time. This presentation was prepared with original diagrams and generic vignettes to ensure confidentiality and safety. Please validate all financial assumptions with your own teams before implementation. For those interested in further reading, we've included references to industry best practices from Vorn, IBM, and Deloitte. These sources provide the technical foundation for the governance model we've discussed today.